Former President Biden's Justice Department asked a federal judge Wednesday to block Texas' new strict immigration legislation that will make entering the United States at the southern border of the Lone Star State illegally and make it a crime. Make it illegal and a crime, that is. The Washington Times reported Associate Attorney General Vinita Gupta claimed the new law was unconstitutional because it would interfere with the federal government's running immigration as they choose. So far, the Biden administration and Governor Greg Abbott have each won recent border-related courtroom battles. Biden won by having a judge order the removal of the floating barrier in the Rio Grande. Still, Abbott won the clash over the feds slashing holes in the 110 miles of razor wire intended to hinder illegal immigration. Texas argued it is being forced to take the stand against illegal immigration due to the federal government not enforcing current federal immigration laws. The new law in Texas is set to take effect in March unless the courts halt its enactment. Calls for foreign nationals caught in Texas without permission to face misdemeanor charges punishable by 6 months in jail or deportation. And illegally re-entering the state after deportation would constitute felony charges. Both mirror current federal law. Now that the release of once redacted Jeffrey Epstein-related court documents has begun, the next step is accessing the accused sex trafficker's flight logs. And Tennessee GOP Senator Marsha Blackburn is taking the lead on that. She has asked Democratic Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin of Illinois for a subpoena to acquire them. Blackburn's request came Wednesday, the same day a federal judge released more than 100 names connected to Virginia Giuffre's civil lawsuit against Epstein and his partner Ghislaine Maxwell. Blackburn pressed for Maxwell's Little Black Book and the unredacted flight logs from the so-called Lolita Express, posting on social media, quote, over 170 of Jeffrey Epstein's associates are to be named in the release of dozens of documents in the coming weeks. The American people deserve transparency. Blackburn's request made it clear the only names that should be protected are of the women and children Epstein and his associates abused and trafficked. Just hours before his name splashed into Jeffrey Epstein-related headlines for supposedly liking young girls, former President Bill Clinton was reportedly spotted cheerfully greeting admirers along a street in Mexico. According to the Daily Mail, Clinton was captured in San Miguel among other tourists there. The town's mayor even shared a photo of Clinton greeting people and welcomed the former president to the best small town in the world. Although Clinton was mentioned in the unsealed court documents 73 times, the former president has not been accused of any wrongdoing and has denied knowing anything about Epstein's criminal behavior. Greg.
Joe Biden and his campaign staff are struggling mightily with the sale of Bidenomics to the American public amid still rising inflation. CNN political analyst Errol Lewis warned the president could lose his re-election bid if he keeps touting his failing economic policies. An anonymous Democrat strategist told NBC, quote, whoever came up with the slogan Bidenomics should be fired. As Biden poll numbers continue to fall and key groups like blacks and Hispanics move away from him, the Biden campaign team is switching messages to an old favorite, MAGA extremism. Here's the president on the attack in a new campaign ad that premiered yesterday.
There's something dangerous happening in America. There's an extremist movement that does not share the basic beliefs in our democracy. All of us are being asked right now, what will we do to maintain our democracy? History's watching. The world is watching. And most important, our children and grandchildren will hold us responsible.
Biden will reportedly launch a new wave of attacks on Donald Trump today at a speech in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Axios says Joe Biden's campaign manager told reporters they're running like the fate of our democracy depends on it, because it does. So let's talk with the executive editor of the Common Sense Society magazine, Christopher Bedford. Welcome, sir, to Victory News.
Great to be here.
Well, Joe Biden will officially launch his Donald Trump and the MAGA Extremist 2024 tour at Valley Forge today. Now, with a suffering economy, failing poll numbers, do you think demonizing half of the nation will put him back in the White House?
Yeah, it was a strategy that actually worked at first in 2020 when a lot of folks were sick of what they saw as the drama in Washington, D.C. and the politics around Trump. But now it's 4 years on. I really don't think that strategy is going to work as much. I know that here in Washington, January 6th and things like that live really large in people's minds, but they're not very strongly on the minds of a lot of the American people who are going to the grocery store, going to the gas station, or wherever else, and seeing the tabs that they have to pay now. And the Biden campaign so far has been thinking that they can use talking points to get out of this. They can talk their way out of Bidenomics when it's something that you can feel. You might be able to talk your way out of a stock market problem when you're a president, but not something that's impacting Americans as much as inflation. And even the democracy argument, which they keep on trying to put themselves through, begins to fall flat when you see states like Maine and Colorado removing Donald Trump, the political opposition, from the ballot. It's hard to say you're the defender of democracy at that point, at least to independent voters.
So let's talk about that. Let's go behind the headlines here. To remove Trump from election ballot wave that's reached now 18 states, dozens of Democrats are also calling for the disqualification of up to 126 Republican colleagues under the same 14th Amendment theory. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington set this fire. How responsible and ethical is this group and its funding?
It's not. It's a hyper-partisan group. They launched. I mean, but they are effective. They launched about 200 lawsuits against Donald Trump during the administration. The lawfare that the left has really pioneered was very effective in trying to slow things down. But right here, they may have overstepped. This is something that has caused consternation in the White House because it steps on their Democratic messaging. It's caused consternation amongst a lot of the pundits to say, "Hold on a second, we can't just start taking people off the ballot because we call them a traitor." Who's in charge of calling you a traitor? Is it the Colorado Supreme Court, entirely Democrats? Is it the Secretary of State appointed in Maine? Who exactly gets to decide who's allowed to run in American elections? And also, there's some concerning things about the group behind them, as you mentioned, Crew. For example, the guy who's running it right now sits on the board of advisors for the Department of Homeland Security, which is basically the department that was behind the governance and disinformation board that even the White House decided went too far and has been at the real tip of the spear in trying to censor Americans. For him, this is just part of an old playbook.
Christopher, at the Common Sense Society, you advance the ideas of liberty, prosperity, and a culture that fosters human happiness. Is it possible to apply that standard to Bidenomics?
I think it's difficult. I think it's very difficult. You know, there's a lot of different theories out there on how to help reach out and help different Americans. And one thing we really learned during COVID, and we saw these micro experiments of it in different states and cities, is that just handing out money for projects, just handing out money for political allies, certainly doesn't promote prosperity, doesn't promote human happiness and flourishing. There are lots of different ways to try and promote those things in the United States. It can be difficult for a politician to do, but Bidenomics' history of just handing out money to reward allies, I don't think that's the path, at least not the American path.
All right, 2 of 3 presidents that chose not to condemn threats of Jewish genocide on their campuses are no longer leading, UPenn and Harvard. MIT President Sally Kornbluth survives as the president of her institution. Do you think she's handled it differently, or is the clock ticking for her?
And she has handled it differently, but the clock still might be ticking. The head of Penn came out right afterwards with an absolutely terrible apology that ended up unraveling, and she lost her job. She was already on thin ice in the first place. Harvard University's Claudine Gay, there was a steady trickle of problems with her academic resume and the way she handled it in the aftermath. Now, MIT, though, there's a lot of student groups that are really upset with the president. And I've been told that through Common Sense Society and through some of the different alumni group and some of the professors there will be more coming out about her in the coming weeks that will shine a light on exactly kind of administration she's been running.
CommonSenseSociety.org.